Welcome to the Product Market Fit Podcast, a show for early-stage founders and operators who are looking to level up their startup growth. I'm your host, Mosheh, and I've got a special solo episode for you today with a big announcement as well. First, the big news. I'm thrilled to tell you that I'm going all in on building a startup in the real estate sector. For the past 3+ years, it's been an honor and a privilege to work with truly incredible founders and teams in my capacity as a fractional CMO, advisor, and ally. I'm also super proud of what we've built at Growth.co and hope to continue to support that. But it's time for me to get back in the arena and build something that I'm passionate about from the ground up. I plan to continue bringing you this podcast every week. In fact, I've got some amazing interviews lined up that I know you're going to enjoy. In addition, I'm thinking of doing more solo content like this, sharing my founder journey along the way. Please tell me if you like this type of content and what areas specifically are most interesting and useful to you. You can always reach me at hello@pmfpod.com or scroll to the bottom of the show notes for my social links. Now, the topic of today is co-founders, and specifically how to interview a potential co-founder before going into business with him or her. I probably don't have to belabor the importance of choosing the right co-founder, but this statistic shocked me, and I bet it surprises you too. According to Noam Wasserman, Harvard Business School professor and author of The Founder's Dilemma, 65% of high-potential startups fail due to conflict among co-founders. That's 2 out of every 3 startups that fail, not due to bad product or lack of funding, but simply because the founders couldn't make it work together. So, obviously, you want to do everything you can early on to reduce the likelihood of that. I always tell people to look at it like dating. In fact, for the next 5 to 10 years, if you're successful, you'll likely spend more time with your co-founder than your significant other. First question to ask yourself is, why do you need a co-founder? And what specifically are you looking for? For me, I knew that I wanted a technical co-founder. Yes, there are amazing no-code or low-code tools out there that I could have used to build at least a V1 of my product, or I could have hired an outsourced development shop to build something to spec. But in my mind, you can't build a technology company and not have a technologist at the helm. I also strongly believe that when you have great people, 1 + 1 = 3. As cliche as that sounds, I've seen that to be true time and time again. Now, once you've decided that you need a co-founder or 2, and the types of roles they would play in your company, the next step is to find the person who has the relevant skills, shares your passion and vision for the problem you're trying to solve, and passes the vibe check in terms of personality and compatibility. In an ideal world, you already know this person, so you aren't starting from zero. Even if you do, it's still worth going through an intensive courting process, because knowing someone as a college roommate, for example, can be very different from knowing them in the capacity of building a company together. If possible, try to do a project with your potential co-founder to see how you work together. Getting to know someone in this context will be enlightening. At the very least, spend time getting to know each other in person and have open and honest conversations. These conversations are what I'm going to focus this episode on. I'll get to the 5 practical things that you must be aligned on at the end, but first, let me share some of the questions I used to get to know my co-founder and ensure compatibility. Starting with vision. Asking questions of why start this particular company and why now. I want to make sure that we share a similar vision and thesis, but that he isn't committed to a particular solution or product. I feel strongly that the customers will determine the product via feedback and iteration, and I wanted to make sure that my co-founder agreed with that and wasn't married to any particular path to solve the specific problem. That being said, it was important that we both shared a passion for the problem set that we're exploring and a conviction around the future state we're both building towards. As part of this, it's also important to understand the motivations of your co-founders. Ask questions like, why found a startup at all? What do you hope to achieve? I also asked, if you weren't going to pursue this, what might you be doing instead? These all help to understand motivations and passion. I also asked a question I stole from Patrick O'Shaughnessy. What drives you most, power, money, or fame? And using follow-up questions to drill into core drivers and motivations. One of my favorites was, how do you think having a lot of money will change you? We had an interesting conversation about that. Next, getting to know your co-founder on a personal level can help you bond, but also gives clues as to their personality. Talk about your childhood, ask about their relationship with their mom or dad. That's a critical one that I learned from Don Valentine at Sequoia. You learn a lot about someone based on their relationship with their parents and siblings. Talk about your and their life journey that brought you to this moment, as well as your hopes and dreams for the future. It may sound goofy, but I really think that this is critical to long-term success. It's also a really good barometer for whether the two of you will be able to have difficult or awkward conversations when needed. You'll want to ask about hobbies and relationship status too. These are good to know in general, but also practically it's important to be aware if your partner just got out of a long-term relationship or is planning on starting a family in the near future. You can also learn about someone by finding out what they're reading and listening to. and asking questions like, which companies and founders do you admire and why? Moving on, understanding a co-founder's working style and self-awareness is crucial. I delved into questions like, how do you structure your day to get maximum output? How do you prefer to give and receive feedback? And what blind spots do you have that you would want me to be aware of and perhaps support you with? These questions provide insights into how we can complement each other's strengths and weaknesses and foster a healthy working relationship. You'll also want to ask questions about conflict resolution. For example, tell me about a time when you had a conflict with a partner, coworker, or boss, and then you want to dive further into that. Finally, some additional questions that helped round out the discussion included pre-mortem questions like, if this startup doesn't work, what would be the most likely cause? And what excites you the most about working with me? And what reservations do you have? This, again, allows you to assess motivations, passion, and honesty. And you can address some of those reservations if possible. If those concerns are real, however, don't gloss over them. Better to avoid the pain and find someone who's a better match than to ignore red flags due to optimism or a desire to get started quickly. The things that matter the most to me and a partner are ambition, integrity, curiosity, intelligence, bias towards action, and resilience. I think I got very lucky in meeting my co-founder, and I'm thrilled to begin working with him. Now, to close this out, I promise to share the 5 practical considerations you absolutely need to iron out with your co-founder or co-founders. Number 1, equity splits. You should do even splits unless there's a strong reason not to. But don't leave it up to assumptions, and make sure everyone is clear on vesting schedules. 2, roles and responsibilities. Hopefully, this is also self-understood, but again, it's worth discussing it and even putting it down on paper. Go beyond just job title and break down each area of the business. Find out who will do what and what process you'll rely on to solve for any potential disagreements or overlap that comes up. Number 3, compensation. How long can each of you go without a salary? If you need a salary, what does that look like? Discuss whether co-founders can take side projects in order to supplement their income in the meantime, and any other considerations, like perhaps health insurance coverage is super critical to one of the founders. Number 4, co-locating versus remote. This is a controversial one, but ideally, co-founders are co-located and working shoulder to shoulder. If you're not currently in the same city, have the conversation about who can move and under what circumstances, and what the plan is until then. If travel is a temporary solution, get specific. How often, who's going to pay, etc. Fundraising is number 5. Last, but by no means least, an important consideration is the plan for funding your company. How much do you anticipate needing to get started? How do you plan on getting that funding? And your future approach to building the company. For example, do you plan to raise multiple rounds and go for maximum growth, or have a more conservative path to profitability? All that needs to be ironed out now. With that, hopefully, y'all are entering into a partnership with eyes wide open and are setting yourselves up for success. Funny enough, when I went through this exercise recently, I improvised most of the questions, mixing some of my favorite podcast interview techniques with questions I like to ask during job interviews. But in doing research for this episode, I found a lot of overlap with fantastic resources put out by YC and First Round, so I'll link to those in the show notes. Anyway, that's a wrap for now. I really appreciate you joining me on this journey. Let me know your thoughts on this style podcast episode, and if you want me to do more of these in the future, you can always reach me at hello@pmfpod.com or find me on LinkedIn or Twitter. I'll be back next week with an interview with a fantastic founder that I'm sure you'll enjoy. Until next time, wishing you and me rocket ship success in our startup journeys. Bye for now.